Come on, honey, let's be done. I want to watch a movie.
I gotta get this review done. I really need to come up with a funny intro.
Well, can I help you?
I don't know, maybe.
Well, what are you doing? What does this do?
Well, it's a graphics card. It basically plays my games.
It plays your games?
Yeah, basically.
So it makes your games go faster?
No, that's what the lights do.
But the graphic card must make your games go faster.
Yeah, but the lights really make it go faster. Hardware Hound here, and we are back with the second half of our mid-range GPU battle. Today we are going to be looking at a GTX 1060, and not just any GTX 1060, but this particular one is the Gaming X model from MSI. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I do want to make a mention of Epic Gear again. As usual, they're sponsoring my channel. I will have links in the description below, so please check them out. Once again, huge fan of their mechanical switches. They feel great. So we need to finish out our battle, and even though there's a lot of info in my previous review that shows a lot of the performance, well, there's some elements that I really want to focus on what MSI is doing and what NVIDIA is doing on this time around. So we're going to dive right in and let's see how well the 1060 really stacks up. Does MSI make the best graphics cards ever? Kind of hard to say because, oh man, they're just so good. And unfortunately, I just don't know every graphics card out there. But let's take a closer look at this guy. So this thing, first off, I mean, for being a GTX 1060, it is a heavy, heavy beast. And, you know, I wasn't expecting such a kind of, you know, thick, sturdy feeling card for something mid-range, but this guy definitely does that. One of the things I've always loved about MSI and their Twin Frozer is the two big fans instead of three smaller ones, and they always end up being super quiet. And sure, if you crank up the speed to max, you can, you know, hear noise and whatnot, and it may not seem all that big of a deal. But really what we want to see is how well it can stay cool without having to spin up to max and see how good the noise is. I really love the way they've got this little twisting going on with the heat pipes here. It's just a little tiny design flair that still just looks excellent. It makes it look like almost, I don't know, maybe slightly hot rodish, but even then it just doesn't look bad on a technology basis either. We've got some extra bracketing going on here, and so they're clearly trying to stop that V droop from happening, but as we'll see soon enough, I'm pretty sure that the only way to totally stop it is, well, a graphics card holder. So yeah, once again, nice backplate, MSI's logo right there, looks sharp. There's a little sticker that says, hey, you mess with this thing, you're gonna void the warranty. We're gonna do that later with the Kraken G12, but for now, we'll just let that sticker rest in peace and enjoy it while it lasts. So yeah, all around, really just solid. MSI makes amazing graphics cards. Once again, we have some HDMI ports, we have some display ports, and we have a DVI-D. So yeah, not bad at all. We've got good connection there, but which should pretty well cover the gamut of monitors up there. You know, considering it's a 1080 card, maybe it'd be nice if we still kept a VGA around. In fact, sometimes I almost wonder if we should get rid of DVI entirely, go to DisplayPort or HDMI, and then use VGA for people who like to do 1080. But even then, I'm not 100% positive the limitations of VGA on refresh rate. So, but even then, I believe you'd still end up HDMI or DisplayPort. So yeah. All around, I just love the looks of this card. I mean, if red's not your thing, that's about the only con I can say is you're stuck with red shroud, even though you can change the logo up here to do RGB. Look at that here in just a second as well. Okay, so I want to do a final closer look on this, you know, card in action lit up. So you can kind of see with just a little bit of the RGB effect on here. Now, MSI is not going crazy with their RGB effect. They only have this one logo that you can change colors on. I've got it on just a basic color cycle, which when you set it to color cycle, automatically does this breathing effect. So, you know, that's not as many color options as I like, but not everybody's obsessed with the amount of LEDs that I am too. So I don't blame it. But you can kind of see there's a little bit of card droop going on here. And, you know, that would be a bad thing if that didn't happen with every card I've ever owned. So I'm not going to dean MSI for it. Really, it's just the simple fact is if you don't want the weight of the card on an air cooler, you know, pulling it down, then you just need to get a GPU riser so that you can just hold that thing up and call it good. So that just seems to be the best solution. I really love the way MSI though does that heat pipe thing. I mean, just in the case when it's installed from the side there, looks fantastic. So yeah, the LEDs look good. They're not overly flashy. Maybe I would prefer them to be a little flashier, but I understand not everybody likes that. And so MSI gives you another option. Of course, there's nothing about this card that looks bad to me and would keep me from buying it. So, alrighty, we have got that all out of the way. Let's go ahead and move on to some testing results. Okay, so now that we've gotten all that closer look out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and do testing performance again. And I'm gonna do basically the same thing I did last time. I'm going to kind of talk about the experience and the overall performance. And I'm just gonna let the graphs go through the whole segment here because there's a lot of performance graphs to go through. So if I talk a little bit longer in this section, well, hopefully that's giving you guys a little more time to see all those graphs and check them and see kind of how that looks. Of course, I will have my written review in the description below. So if you go to that link at pureoverclock.com, you can also see each graph individually, click on them to make them larger and see everything in a little more detail. So let's talk about this 1060 in performance. And you know, I think really, it's just to sum it up, is fantastic. The GTX 1060 was definitely a performing beast of a video card, and there's really not a whole lot I can say about it. Now, AMD's RX 580 does seem to kind of be a very strong competition, at least in some of those AAA titles. And you know, the ones that flavor the titles that are of a kind of more of an AMD flavor, they definitely pulled a stronger lead. I was a little surprised to see Rise of the Tomb Raider being a little bit closer because I kind of assumed with, you know, the Nvidia sponsoring and stuff on, or like advertising on the intro pages and stuff, that Rise of the Tomb Raider would have favored a little bit more. But it was still neck and neck in performance. And so, yeah, not bad at all. One of the things, if there was one complaint that I do still kind of see with NVIDIA, and it was kind of hit or miss. At 1080p, we never really saw it hit as hard, but when we upped the resolution to 1440, that's when we would see some dips. And that's NVIDIA's proprietary software, the things like their hair visuals and things like PhysX. Particularly in Borderlands 2, man, when the PhysX started cranking up and they were set high with all the high settings at 1440p, frame rate just tanked. Now, I think special features are great, but I don't think they should risk sacrificing performance. And maybe that's just some kind of bug that could be fixed, but it's also one that's obviously not being run into on a regular basis. Borderlands pre-sequel is an older game. I think that's something you have to be wary of with NVIDIA, but that's about the most major complaint I can come up with, because after that, we've got phenomenal performance. You look at the things like competitive titles, esports, and then Blizzard games, this thing was just blowing the competition away in every Blizzard title. NVIDIA clearly has the advantage when it comes to World of Warcraft, when it came to Heroes of the Storm, and a huge advantage in Overwatch, which for those of you who are into that game, well, then the 1060 is going to give you some awesome, smooth gameplay. So yeah, I'm really impressed too that with the 6 gigs of VRAM that's included on this 1060, it keeps up pretty well in high resolutions as well. So there's just not anything to complain about on the 1060 on that level. Now, there's 2 things that I noticed that I tried out. And these are things that are on experience levels, and it really impressed me. Just super impressed me at what just an amazing job NVIDIA is doing. We have, first off, when I was running the Deus Ex benchmark, and kind of seen that. I don't know what it was, and I checked through a bunch of features, and I'm not sure that there's anything that directly relates to this, and I don't know why. But it looked like the 1060 had just some natural anti-aliasing that smoothed out edges better than the competition without any anti-aliasing enabled. I had to disable MSAA because it was just hitting the performance too much. And yet somehow the 1060 just seemed to naturally smooth out the edges. I don't know what that's about, but it looks great. And I'm sure I would probably notice that over time if I got more chances to really play heavily on it. But so take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but when we're talking about experience, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And smoothed out lines, smoother edges, those are things that add to your experience, and that's a great thing. One of the other things that I noticed, so when you've got a straight 60 hertz refresh monitor, if you want to avoid clipping and tearing, well, you either have to do VSync or you have to somehow lock that frame rate right at 60. VSync puts input lag. If you don't have a G-Sync or adaptive sync monitor, well, with this case, only G-Sync, because FreeSync's not going to work with this, then you're going to have tears if you're going above that frame rate. So NVIDIA introduced something called Fast Sync, and what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to reduce input lag while still giving you a non-tear free experience when you're going above the current refresh range of your monitor. Amazing. So I jumped into Rise of the Tomb Raider, and I'm just like waving the mouse around, trying to get the clipping to happen, because especially when you look up and down, you can get a lot of tears in Rise of the Tomb Raider if you're above that refresh rate. No tears at all. Worked fantastic. There is, though, one little thing about that, is that if you drop below 60 frames, then you do get to see the visual, slowness that is 30 frames per second. Because basically, on something that isn't adaptive sync, 30 frames per second is going to be what you get as soon as you drop below 60. And you can tell. You can start really telling at 30 frames that the smoothness is starting to kind of cut out of the game there. So when it comes to, though, if you can just set your settings, keep your frames above your 60 hertz refresh rate and enable fast sync, fantastic. I was super, super impressed with that. Honestly, guys, the 1060 is just a fantastic and great performing card. So I think we need to go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and sum up everything and wrap this review up with a award and, conclusion. So how do we sum up everything that we've come to know about this GeForce GTX 1060? Well, for starters, there's a little bit of details that I've gleaned over in the previous mentions in the video. They're also in my written review, but I'm going to kind of sum up some of that now. It's because, well, I want to try to keep these things fairly short, short as possible, but still give you good information. Let's talk about the overall build quality. Oh my gosh, MSI makes amazing cards. I mean, they are fantastic. I do notice that the real heavy nature of the back plate and everything does cause a little bit of video card sag there. But to be honest, I haven't seen a video card that doesn't have that. And I know Cooler Master put out a really nice double riser type thing to help hold up your cards. And I just don't know that there is a good solution outside of that. Maybe there is some video cards out there that don't sag over time. I haven't owned one personally, so I'm not really gonna care about that. MSI has just got such a great quality build card. The thing stays really cool. The fan noise is fantastic on that Twin Frozer. I mean, it's just a great card. And I love what MSI is doing. MSI is definitely one of my favorites when it comes to video cards. If there's one complaint that I would add, it's just the fact that their Gaming X uses so much red. I am not a huge fan of gaming red. In all my system, I kind of like everything to stay a little more neutral, and then I use my lights to bring my color in. But even then, that's just a personal preference, and it still looks great. Overclocking wise, 1060, it doesn't probably have as much headroom as some of the higher end NVIDIA cards, but it still had a decent amount of overclocking room, and there was definitely extra performance to be had with that. And so if you don't mind pushing your clocks and your memory a little bit higher, finding a nice stable point, it's pretty easy to do. And you know, sometimes just getting down to that last stable megahertz can be a little tricky, or you can just do like 5 megahertz increments and make it a little easier on yourself and find a stable point there, which is usually what I prefer to do, because honestly, what's 2 or 3 extra megahertz going to do on your performance? You're not even going to be able to tell. So yeah, overclocking, quality, we are doing great. If there is one genuine complaint that I have about NVIDIA, and that's even beyond when I talked about their proprietary software, which, you know, that's pretty easy to fix. You just change a setting, lower something, you're done. But I'm really disappointed that NVIDIA decided to kill SLI with their 1060. And I know I'm a rare cookie when it comes to my obsession with dual GPU configurations, but I love SLI, and I wish they would have, at least in the mid-range still. I kind of understand 1050 Ti, you start saying, all right, this isn't worth it. But I wish they would have kept SLI. I mean, rocking 2 1060s would be awesome. And I don't think they're going to cannibalize their higher end sales, because let's face it, if you have a title that doesn't support dual GPUs, then you've officially halved your performance. Where if you get a 1080 that's basically double the performance in a single card, then you don't have to worry about any title having your performance, because all titles should support the single card. I really wish they'd bring SLI back. There's not that many of us, but you know, it'd just be a huge favor. That's it though, guys. This card is just a fantastic card. For a guy who can tend to be a pretty huge AMD fan, especially when it comes to Ryzen, I cannot say anything bad about what NVIDIA is doing. In fact, the GTX 1060 is definitely forcing AMD to work a lot harder. I will say that fast sync is not as good as FreeSync though. And I think if NVIDIA would just bite the bullet and just support FreeSync, that would kind of just seal the deal. There would be absolutely no reason to recommend AMD at that point. But G-Sync monitors cost quite a bit more, and I'm telling you what, FreeSync is an amazing, amazing bonus to your gaming experience. So I do highly recommend Adaptive Sync, and if you can afford a G-Sync monitor, then go ahead and grab it, because you will really appreciate that experience. So there we go, guys. That's kind of an overview of everything I've got in the card. You can still check out my full written review to see any details that maybe I didn't mention here, or, you know, just have a little more spare time to click through some graphs and stuff. Ultimately, there's no two ways about it. The MSI Gaming X GeForce GTX 1060 easily earns a Pure Overclock Editor's Choice Award. It is a fantastic card. I am really glad I got to experience what NVIDIA has to offer, because in my opinion, they are offering some great performance to gamers, and I don't feel like I have anything really big to complain about. Like and subscribe to my channel if you want me to keep going and keep doing these reviews. I will keep doing the best I can to squeeze them in when I can, and I will catch you later.